well, today's already Tuesday, the next couple days, you've got missing work. You've got missing work. Now's the time to get it done, whether it's biology or any other class.
And we sent out an announcement yesterday, yeah, it must have been yesterday, that said, if you have missing work that you want to be part of your semester 1 grade, when does it say that it needs to be submitted by? Friday at 8 a.m. it says. Okay, so that's what we are saying. I'm not sure what your other teachers are saying. Maybe they're saying Thursday at midnight. Maybe they're saying next week, Monday. I don't know. Okay, we are saying that if you want it graded and on your semester grade, we need to have by Friday at 8 a.m. You can say, well, that's not much difference. We started school on September 1st, 4th? It's been a while. Okay, it's been a while. So if you have stuff from like September, October to say like, hey, we don't have enough time to finish it. Okay, so.
Friday is a work day for staff.
Yep.
It has been cleared for staff to work from home. So if you would need to connect at school with a teacher, keep that in mind that you're gonna need to make arrangements prior. Don't assume that everyone's gonna be in the building on Friday. Okay, so like if you're like, hey, I'm planning on coming in Friday, hey, you better talk to that teacher first just to make sure. Okay, because due to childcare and all kinds of other factors, they may or may not, your teachers may or may not be in the building or only certain hours of the day or whatever. So just be aware of that Friday. Don't just take for granted, hey, they're there all day. Nope, that might not be the case, all right?
Yeah, and like, for example, my wife and I, we have our kids that we're gonna be trying to coordinate. I don't even know, I might say I will be here from this time to this time, and I will only be here from this time to this time. And I will I'll send out an announcement if that is gonna be the case, but as of right now, in general, I'd say for your teachers, don't plan on just them being just sitting here waiting for you to show up, so communicate.
We're gonna start here today, okay? It's the single-sided worksheet. Mendelian genetics, in-class review is the title at the top. There is a front side, there are also 2 Punnett squares on the back. So, we're gonna have you start here. If you didn't grab one, come get one. And go ahead and start. We will go over this together here for too long, but get done what you can here, okay?
We'll start with about 5 minutes, and we'll kind of judge it with, like, see how we're doing by then, but that's where we're gonna start off. Oh, I'll write it on the board too, blood type. I'll write out the genotypes and phenotypes. Summation on the board is for blood types and question number 3. So question number 1 on Punnett squares, and I think I don't remember, it must be number 4, are blood types. And blood type is a codominant trait, so remember both blood type A and B are dominant over O, which is recessive. If we say the phenotype is blood type A, then you have 2 possible genotypes that they could be. And we do not expect you to memorize these for your test on Wednesday or Thursday. You will be given this information on a test, but you need to be able to use this. So for blood types, we have blood types information up on the board. Number 2 and number 3 are hemophilia and colorblind, both of which are a sex-linked recessive trait. And in order for you to have this sex-linked recessive trait, you must have no X big letter. So for number 3 is colorblind, you cannot have an X big B. If it's hemophilia, you cannot have an X big H, I believe is what. Okay, so we didn't mention this for colorblindness for number 3. It's sex-linked recessive. The X little b is the colorblind allele, X big B is normal vision. So kind of be using that information for your Punnett squares when you get to that. Okay, so we are looking at that in-class review sheet. Matching section, good test-taking strategies. Remember, process of elimination is a good thing to use. We have 9 terms or nine choices to go with the 9. Each one's used once. So if you get stuck on one, skip it. And then process of elimination should kind of help us along with it. Remember, sometimes a question that's being asked in the first section, maybe answered later on. So just, again, test-taking strategies, some things to kind of think about. I don't have my answer handy, so we'll go off of my memory. All right, so number one, the father of modern genetics is a guy by the name of Gregor Mendel. That's letter D, right? Gregor Mendel was the father of modern genetics, and he studied pea plants. And he did a lot of things with self-fertilization and true breeding to kind of guarantee his results. An organism that has two of the same, remember the prefix same is homo, so when we talk about same alleles, the term is homozygous, letter I. If we have...
Should we have been worried yesterday nobody caught my mistake?
Well, yeah. Number three, a trait that can cover another trait. So if we have two different traits and one covers up or dominates over the other one, what that is we refer to that as a dominant trait or a dominant allele, letter F.
The one that's always expressed, I think we use that terminology too.
Number four is one that, this is the one that probably you might say, hey, is it this one or is it this one? Is it allele or is it heterozygous? Because it does say different, so is that heterozygous? But, and again, if we skip it and we come back to it, hopefully you realize that when we talk about different variations of genes, we have different alleles. We have those dominant allele and recessive alleles. So number four is letter H for allele. A segment of DNA that codes for something, and in particular codes for a particular trait, is referred to as a gene. That is the definition of a gene, and that's something you should hopefully know from last unit. We asked you again, pretty good chance you're going to see that yet again, based upon that kind of frequency of when we've seen it. What we see, or what we physically observe, physically see, when we look at an organism is our phenotype. Physical, what we physically see or observe is the phenotype. Organism that has two different, the prefix for different, remember, is hetero, so when we have two different alleles is heterozygous, letter E. The genetic makeup, the letters that go along with it, the two-letter combination is referred to as genotypes. And we asked a lot of genotypic and phenotypic ratios, and the genotypics are the letters, and the phenotypic are what we see. So genotypic is letter A, and can be covered by another trait. So that trait can be covered or can be hidden or masked. That's a recessive trait. And the dominant trait masks or covers up that recessive trait. Now there's certain modes of inheritance that are completely dominant. We only see the dominant trait. On last week, Wednesday, we went through and we talked about some other modes. We talked about incomplete. And incomplete is when it's in between, right? Red and white, in between that is pink. Between brown and white is tan. Between blue and yellow would be green, right? So our heterozygous trait is in between those. It doesn't completely dominate. It's somewhat dominating, but it's more the in-between. I don't like to use the word mix, but kind of think of it a little bit like that. I don't like mixing because that kind of implies the blending hypothesis is true, but it's not. Okay? Questions about vocab?
Everybody got this written down?
Vocab's important. All right, so a woman who is heterozygous for blood type A. So on the board, I have some that information. She is blood type A. So because she's blood type A, there's two possible genotypes. She could be AA or AO. But remember, the prefix hetero means different. So AA, that's same. AO is the different. She's blood type A though, so she's got to be one of those two. So she's going to be AO. Accuses a man who is heterozygous for B. So the man is also heterozygous, but this time he's blood type B. So BB or BO, he's hetero, different, therefore he's got to be BO. Punnett square, we drag and we drop. We bring the big A down and the little b over, and we get something that looks like that. Okay, Punnett square, we get possible outcomes. Genotype is the letter combinations. But when we talk about phenotypes for blood type, it's what are we seeing? So if it's AB, we get blood type AB. If it's BO, we get blood type B. We don't say BO, that's the genotype. Blood type B is the phenotype. We can get blood type A, and then we can get blood type O. Okay, so there's 4 possible phenotypes, and this is how we could actually, 2 parents could produce 4 different blood type children, or they could have 4 children that would all have different blood types. So based upon mom being heterozygous for A and dad being heterozygous for B, is it possible that the child who is O is the son of the dad? Yes, right? It's possible. Now, this isn't a conclusive test that he's the father, but it's a test that says, hey, it's possible. And prior to DNA sequencing, blood type was a thing that they would use as a part of paternity testing. Now, there's also pluses and minuses that go into it, but just because he could produce a child of blood type O, there's lots of other people whose outcome could also produce a blood type O child. Just keep that in mind. But it's possible based upon this. Questions on that blood type? We're going to flip to the next blood type just to kind of keep talking about blood types. All right, so if we flip that over, it's number 4, I think it is, number 4. A mother who is heterozygous for B, so again, she's blood type B. Okay, so it's one of these 2 genotypes, but she's heterozygous. Hetero means different, that's BO. Now, I didn't write it on the board, but realized we could also say OB, like, right, we could. But what is OB gonna give us? Well, B is dominant over O, which is recessive, so it's gonna be a blood type B. It's just kind of following the convention that we put the dominant allele first, but realize that if you wrote it in the incorrect order, or OB, it's still an option. Okay, so mom is blood type B, and she's heterozygous, so she's BO. She marries a man with blood type AB. The only possible genotype for AB is AB. So what are all of the possible blood types that they could have for children? And that's what we get. Both of those 2 that Mr. DeBoer just circled, BB and BO, both give us the blood type of B. A BO does not mean you're B and O. B is dominant over O. So what do we see? We see the B trait because it's dominant. But A and B are co-dominant. So in, for example, dad, we see both the A and we see the B. It's co-dominant. Okay, so those are the possible blood types that those 2 parents could have produced. Can you go back number 4 really quickly?
Yeah.
So if those were the parents, and if they had a child who was blood type O, what would that tell us if they had a child who was blood type O?
He's adopted.
He's adopted, or one of these parents aren't the biological parent, right? Okay, they wouldn't be one of the biological parents. Could be a stepbrother, whatever, but they aren't the biological, because we can't get blood type O out of these children, because this is blood type A, right? Even though it's AO, we see the A. Okay? I just want to make that point. Okay, let's talk sex-linked recessive traits. Sex-linked recessive trait is the traits we spent the least amount of time with on Wednesday or Thursday, and based upon your homework that you worked on, hopefully you did okay. If you have some questions on your packet for incomplete codominance, sex-linked recessive, we'll give you a little bit of time later in this class. That would be a great opportunity for you to ask some of those questions prior to the test, but we're going to spend a little bit of time with sex-linked. Remember, sex-linked is, it's the modes of sex-linked that we're looking at. The traits are carried on the X chromosomes. The number one thing you got to start by identifying is what are the sex chromosomes for mom and dad. And remember, if there's a Y, it's a guy, right? right? Or a guy has a Y. Okay, so dad is XY and mom is gonna be XX. And I'm gonna say it every single time. Okay, so that's a good starting point. If it talks about a son or a boy, that's an XY. If it's a daughter, it's an XX. Now these aren't as straightforward as some of the other ones we've done, but it starts with, we have a boy who has hemophilia. That's the son. Okay, it's a sex-linked recessive trait, and because it is carried on the X chromosomes, the idea for the son or any boy is they can't have a big H on their X chromosomes. Okay, so we have a boy who has hemophilia, so we have to have no big H's. So what would this boy's genotype need to be? The son, the boy, would have to be X little h Y. Because he does not have hemophilia, he must have X little h. Yeah.
Can you have an allele or like an H after the Y?
There are some modes of sex-linked recessive that are carried on the Y chromosome.
Okay. So I
Yep,
was
there
gonna
are.
say, most of the ones we do, I don't see like any behind the Y.
All of the ones that we do and will do are carried on the X chromosomes.
Okay.
And all of the ones that we're dealing with are recessive on the X.
Okay.
But there are some traits that are dominant and carried on the X, and there are some that are carried on the Y. But for our purposes, we are only focusing on recessive on the X.
Okay.
Okay? So the boy must be X little h. The son must be X little h. The dad has hemophilia. So dad, we know this is dad because XY. He has hemophilia. It's a blood clotting disorder. What must be on the X chromosome? A big H or a little h?
So like,
Little h, because he has a recessive trait. He cannot have a big H. So dad must be X little h. Why? There's nothing on the Y chromosome. Okay? The mom does not have hemophilia. So what must one of the X's be? X
big H.
has to be at least one big H on it. Whether it's one, whether it's two, to be determined. Okay, but that's where we're starting. It must be X big H, something, because she does not have that trait. However, if we look back at the son, okay, if we look at this box right here, because we know mom must have at least one X big H, this would be this son. Okay, this is not the boy in question. Okay, right? Because this is X big H, the boy has hemophilia, not that box. If this box were to be that boy, because it's the other boy box, and if they were to have the X little h, we can then kind of make a prediction as to what it is. Now, when we talk about the boy, there's an X chromosome, there's a Y chromosome. Where did the Y chromosome come from? Mom or dad? How do you know? Who has Y chromosomes?
Dad.
Males, right? And only males. So that Y chromosome on the son must have come from daddy. I don't know why I said daddy. Must have come from dad. If the Y came from dad, where would the X chromosome had to have come from?
Mom.
Had to come from mom. And if the son is X little h, why? Where did that X little h come from? It came from mom. So what is the second letter of mom? It must be X big H, X little h, right? It would have to be if that is her biological son. So that would have to be X little h, because X big H, X little h could potentially produce X little hy. Now, does mom have the trait? Does mom have hemophilia? No. Does she have the trait in her genotype that she could pass on to the next generation? Yes, we'd say she's heterozygous, but the other term that we can use is she is a carrier of that trait. Mom is a carrier for hemophilia. She doesn't have it, but she's carrying the trait on to the next generation, or possibly carrying it on to the next generation. So of this son, who did the son inherit the disorder from? Even though dad has it, dad did not have any effect on that. Was not the cause. I don't want to use cause. Dad was not the parent who passed the trait on.
The source.
The source, there we go. Dad was not the source of hemophilia. because dad had the Y chromosome and gave the Y chromosome, the X little h had to have come from mom. The trait was inherited from mom. The fact that dad has hemophilia is a coincidence in this case. It's not from dad. Okay, sex-linked recessive. Hemophilia, very similar to color blindness. Color blindness is also a sex-linked recessive trait. So we didn't say that on number 3. I wrote it on the board. I talked about it briefly. A mother who is not colorblind. So what is mom? She's XX or XY? XX. So, and she is not colorblind. If we use B's, big B's and little b's, what must one of her letters be? She must be X, big B, something. And we'll just kind of leave it at that for a moment. She has a son and a daughter who are both colorblind. She has a son who's colorblind. She has a daughter who is also colorblind. So what we're trying to determine is whether dad was colorblind or not. So let's talk genotypes of the daughter, and let's talk genotypes of the son. Okay, so what we're really doing is we're talking about what the kids were, and then we're going to try to say, hey, is it possible to put them in these boxes, and if so, what would dad have to be? It's kind of working backwards. So if it's a son, XX or XY, XY, and he is colorblind, so what B would have to be on that X chromosome?
The little one.
Has to be X little by. Okay? So the son is X little by. The daughter is colorblind, so what would she have to be?
X little b.
And what's the second letter?
Little b.
X little b, right? She's homozygous for the colorblind trait. Now let's talk about son quick. If this is dad, this is the son, where'd the Y chromosome come from? It had to come from dad, right? Had to come from dad. So where did that little b come from? If this came from dad, where'd this come from? Process of elimination. Mom, right? So what does mom's second letter have to be then?
Little b.
So she's called a carrier. She's a carrier for the trait. Now that's not what the question's asking, but it's getting us a step closer. So now that we know that mom is a carrier, the daughter has 2 X's, and both of those are X little b. If mom has an X little b, let's just say that that X little b came from mom. How do I know? Because I know mom has an X little b based upon the son. Where did that other X little b have to come from then? X little b came from mom. Where the other X little b need to come from?
Dad.
Had to come from dad. And if dad has an X little by, is dad colorblind?
No. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, right? X little b, there is no dominant allele, therefore dad is colorblind. If a female has an X-linked sex-linked recessive trait that's carried on the X chromosome, in order for the daughter to have that trait, both mom and dad would need to have that little allele. And if dad has that little allele, that recessive allele, dad must have that trait if the daughter is it, because he had to give an X little letter chromosome. Okay? Questions about sex link? All right, we have about 20 minutes left in class. So I want to show you a few things quick in Canvas. So in Canvas, under modules, okay, we're here, okay? So today, agenda, we did this already. We're gonna talk Quizlet really quick, and then you're gonna get a little time to kind of get working on tomorrow's virtual day assignment. So back in modules, what is your virtual day assignment prior to the test on Wednesday or Thursday? And if we click on our virtual to-do list, we have three things: study, get ready for your test, and we have two ways that we are going to tell you or try to hold you accountable for preparing and studying. So one of the things you picked up on the way in, or it's linked right here, is this study guide. So just like we've done before, there's three ways you could submit: the paper copy, the Google Doc that's linked here, or the PDF that's linked here, and mark up that PDF. And just like we've done in the past, that as you're working through this, if you have questions, the answer key is posted right there. The answer key is for you to get clarification on what we're looking for, or to check your answers, not just copy answers blindly so we have it done, right? That's not good for learning. The intent is reinforcement of that learning. So that is one of the assignments for tomorrow that you're going to submit prior to your test. The other thing is a Quizlet test like we've done before. Vocab, there's lots and lots of vocab. Right here, this is a stack of 39 terms that we have identified to be important terms for this unit. So there's 39 of them, and in a moment I'm going to ask you to spend a little bit of time reviewing those. And also, like what we've done before, click here. This is the one we want you to click on. This will take you to a Quizlet test. The way I have it set up, and hopefully is working, we had some weird things kind of happen last time. It will open up a 39-question multiple choice test for you to take. And based upon the definition, we're asking you to identify which vocab term goes with that. When you're all done with all 39, make sure you hit check answers and take a picture of your final score. Take a screenshot. That's what you're going to submit. Once you hit submit, and if you don't take a screenshot, we don't get a record of this. Your screenshot is your record to show us that you did it. So make sure you take that screenshot and submit the screenshot of your score. Like we've done in the past, we are saying you must get at least a 70% on that test. If you don't, go through the vocab again, do it again. If you get a 70%, we are going to enter a C in your practice to learn grade for your Quizlet test. If you get a 92%, we're going to enter an A in your practice to learn score. Okay? So we, for about the next 5 minutes, I'm going to ask you to go to Canvas, in-person instruction or in-person agenda, and I want you to click on this Quizlet stack and spend a little bit of time reviewing those terms. We're going to spend about 5 minutes going through vocab, you spending some time looking at those vocab in particular, and then in 5 minutes, we're going to either do one of two things. We're either going to do a Quizlet live as a class to kind of review those, or we'll kind of poll you and kind of give you some feedback, or we might say, okay, you've spent 5 minutes on vocab, then you have one of two choices. You either start working on that study guide, or you take that Quizlet test that you just spent 5 minutes looking through those terms. Okay, but we want you to look through Quizlet for 5 minutes, and it's linked here on today's in-person agenda. Okay, so pull out Canvas, Quizlet stack, 39 terms, spend some time on that.